Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Cook County Board of Commissioners regular meeting today, Tuesday, August 13th. And if you'd stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As we begin, I would like to thank the court administration for allowing us to use the courtroom today because of our primary election. As we come to order, because we're in a different location, just a reminder that you're going to need to speak relatively loud, enunciate clearly, because we don't have mics, particularly for the board right here at the tables. As we get started, are there any adjustments to today's agenda? Any adjustments or changes to the agenda?
Is it on there?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion approved.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Storley. Is there support?
I'll support.
Thank you, Commissioner Wright. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. At this time, we'll open our public comment period, an opportunity for citizens to appear before the county board. We have a significant number of people in attendance to speak today, so we will be limiting our comments to 5 minutes, and we'll be timing those. What we have is a microphone set up at the table up front, and so if anyone likes to speak for the public comment period, they can come up there, sign in, and then speak into the microphone. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak this morning?
Is it going?
Yes. And if you can sign in and then, okay, great.
Okay, so I would like to speak about the extension position. Everything I'm going to say is back to
Carolyn, could you just state your name and address?
Carolyn Drive, 406 Second Avenue East. I'd like to say that everything I'm saying is factual and logical, and I hope you'll listen to my comments. As Diane Booth predicted, when Administrator Yorkie single-handedly put the position into the university, the position would have loyalty to the university, and as she said, the local residents would be left to fend for themselves, which is a different version of extension than we were used to in the past. To me, there are two issues. One is why are we spending $100,000 outside of the county to the university in which that position is located there, and secondly, the issue is are the individual needs of the county residents and taxpayers being addressed. There are lots of issues. One is in the community garden. There were suddenly a lot of rules and requirements that the people there had to donate time to maintain the overall garden. At the farmers market, some people, I was told, quit because there were a lot of rules imposed. And at the community orchard, that was taken over by the county, even though I gave the trees to the jail and to the community. And now those, there are volunteers that work there Fridays, even though there will be no volunteers that I know of working on the apple festival, and no public people being able to pick the apples. So that's why. I have to ask all these questions, why? Because none of this makes any sense as a taxpayer in this community. There have been other, and I have an answer for that. There's been other information that's been erroneous about there's no treatment for boardrooms except spraying, which is not true. Bucks sells these things, these caps that work very well in my yard. There's been an attempt to cancel a garage sale, which eventually went through. There's a suggestion of tearing down some of the fruit trees in the orchard, which should not be torn down because they were just too young. You know, apple trees bloom after a couple of years. Apricots and cherries take 4 to 7 years. So that was a suggestion, I blocked it. There's been 2 leaves of absences covered by extra assistance. There's been closures on Monday, and evidently Diane Ruth told me that when she was trying to teach the new person, the person said after 2 sessions of 2 hours that she learned all she could learn, and with that, all the 30 years of data were thrown away. What's the answer? Why is this happening? The answer, as far as I can ascertain, the extension persons, all the time the extension person spends on organizing volunteer activities on the computer, the rulemaking, etc., is part of the University of Minnesota new configuration of extension for counties for a tracking system in which activities are to be tracked, organized, and controlled.
You only have a minute and a half.
Okay, so I hope this board will cancel the MOU with the overreach by the university, and that the personnel that kept on can now be asked to begin to unwind some of these rulemaking and control decisions and be directed to spend time taking care of the needs of the county taxpayers and learn this job. The past emphasis on doing the university organizing tasks of local volunteers and the level of computer work makes one wonder if this is a good fit personnel-wise.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public that wish to speak this morning? Good morning.
Good morning.
There's a place to sign in right there. And then when you're finished, if you just state your name and address for the record.
Alrighty. Seven Cedarstone. I can confirm that, yeah, it. I'm an electric pharmacist, and I am also commenting on this issue about the extension, and I have a lot of questions, which I guess you can't answer. I can only comment right here. So, let's see. I guess my timer's running here.
I won't start till you're ready to speak.
Okay, thank you. So, I've been a master gardener for more than 5 years in Cook County, and I found there's concern about the UMN Extension Office role. If I'm not mistaken, each of the 87 counties has a UMN Extension Office. They are led by community educators, for instance, like in St. Louis County and our own county. And Sarah Waddle is the Cook County Extension Educator and Community Center Director. She is an excellent one. She's cheerful, creative, proactive, approachable, a great problem solver, and always ready to offer follow-up. She's an excellent fit for this community. The August 8th letter from Ms. Dry regarding the MOA U of M extension was filled with lack of knowledge and inaccuracies. Despite my efforts to understand the content, there was a great deal of distortion in the sentence formation, and I'm still quite baffled on how to address the writer's concerns. So the U of M extension provides great university resources and makes them available to all. And this is a benefit to our community. And it's my understanding the Extension Committee has local townspeople on it. The Extension Committee has local townspeople on it and there are openings for all to join to offer their input. Any person with ongoing interest may apply to be on the committee, and I suggest this person do so. I do hope that commissioners will continue the memorandum of agreement with the U of M extension program. To lose this arrangement would be a great loss to our community, and every community, to my understanding, has one. I came from the West End today. We have a West End Garden Club down there, and I wanted to let members know about this meeting and sent an email to the people who decide what emails are shared, what information is shared. And it was decided this topic was too political. U of M extension community service is too political. Interesting. This is what we're facing these days. It's just to provide a service, and someone has to be in charge and help us develop the program and carry out duties. There are rules to make rules. I was vetted. I had my background checked in order to become a master gardener. That's not too many rules. I don't know what rules are a problem. So, confusing. More questions than answers. I hope to learn more. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public who wish to speak this morning?
Good morning, Justin Rexford, 2 Justin Lane, Gray Marais, President Flintlock Range Association. One of the items that you had in front of you on the agenda is for the amending the current lease that Flintlock Range Association had originally brought forward to the board. It's a pretty simple change to go from, it's for insurance liability requirements, to go from $1.5 million per occurrence to down to $1 million. Upon months of working on insurance for a proposed shooting range, it was found that industry standard was for a range of the size that we're looking to build is $1 million per occurrence, $2 million aggregate, 500 for wrongful death. When we sought out the insurance policy to cover that $1.5 million, that put us into a market of excess gap coverage. Excess gap coverage, we found out, was a very lengthy process, and it's 3 times what the first policy cost, which would be for a range of our size and with our financial being right now, it would be crippling for the range. Had a conversation with attorney Molly Hicken about some of the issues that we were having, and she did some research and figured out that, $1 million per occurrence is industry standard, and that too, it could easily drop down with no issues upon her doing research on that. So I ask that you approve and support that change. That it will be very instrumental into us getting this range going, being able to meet that simple requirement versus getting excess gap coverage, which would greatly hit us very hard financially to get this up and running. So I thank you for your time, and I appreciate everything that the county board does, and thank you to Molly Hicken and James Jorley for your support on this. Thank you too, Brady, for your research as well. Have a good day.
Are there other members of the public who wish to speak this morning?
morning, Arvis Thompson, 1455 County Road 14. I wish to speak, first of all, on the cannabis that's going to be looked at later on today. There were a couple articles in the last few papers that talked about the decision, it sounds like it's already made for the 14 licenses. And I realize that that's in a draft. I'm asking you to consider something less than that. I thought that was one of the decisions that you were going to be making today. And we're only talking retail here. There were questions raised at the Colville meeting that suggested less license initially would be a better approach, given that there are still some unknowns. The paper said the county liquor license allows a maximum of 1 license in each of 7 areas. I'm wondering why you doubled that. One thought was a license in each of the 5 districts. Why not give yourself some time, couple years, to set this up, to organize on a smaller, manageable scale? Right now, the county doesn't know who all sells the lower potency edibles, nor are you authorized to register or license those. Public health is charged with compliance checks and more. They deserve time to set up for these initial checks and the ongoing work that they will incur. Time to figure out who and how to do this. Time before you run rampant and start to hire and expand, before anyone knows what they are doing. And what of the auditor's office? Section 3 places a lot of responsibility on that staff. Do you know your population's health issues? Cannabis, other drugs, alcohol? Staff deserves time to explore and document what currently is, so a comparison can be made as to the growth of this product, whether it's a healthy growth or problematic. A comment was heard that cannabis would be just plain fun for residents and visitors. Edibles are already available in a couple of spots in the county. How much fun do we need? Or are you seeing cannabis as the new recreation for our tourists? I encourage caution in setting the retail numbers. Let's grow this thing together. Your constituents are wondering if the revenue from cannabis is clouding some of the decisions. And who are you making these decisions for? I'd also like to address housing. On July 23rd at a county board meeting, the statement was made that the county, we still need up to 500 housing units. If you would refer to the July 6th News Herald article, an HRA housing analysis shows that Cook County could absorb over 500 new units by the end of 2026. Need was being used to justify when the actual statement was absorb. Huge differences. Who are you building for? Do we need to build for the year-round workers, families who want to live, work, and contribute to this county? Or is the need for the retirees, the half-year residents, the second homeowners? This past week, the Yorkburg project was highlighted, and according to LOCI, I don't know how to pronounce that, in a 2022 housing study, they quantified or measured the shortage in Cook County at 600 units, and home ownership opportunities are in even shorter supply. I'd like the HRA, the EDA, the city, and the county board to share who they think is going to be here to service these imaginary numbers and where they intend to put up the tent city that's going to house the service personnel. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public that wish to speak this morning?
Jennifer Victor Larson. I'm at 23 Boller Creek Road, just off the 7 west of town. I've been here 4 years, so I'm a newcomer. I know there's a lot of history and diverging opinions, and I love that. I was part of the District 10 Council in St. Paul. So I appreciate the work that you do here and the input from the community. I am here to speak on the extension agreement, and I'm just going to speak from my own experience. I don't have, again, the whole history that you all have here in the county, but I would like to say we have come here really looking to be part of the community. One of those things means stewarding the land that we have here and creating a more robust forest, as well as producing food for us, and if it all works out, for the community as well. And all of this, from my experience, the extension has been an enormous resource for me. Sarah Waddle personally has just provided so much information. It seems like her name is attached to everything that I found useful. She got me involved in the Cook County Food Network, and from there, I've gotten even more resources. U of M, of course, has a lot of resources, but I've been interested to find out that there's a lot of local resources, which is what I was desperately looking for. So everything from there to providing potatoes and onions to plant that were successful here. So it's been a really wide range, and I really personally have benefited and found it to be an incredible value. So I just want to speak on that from that perspective.
Thank you. And if you'd make sure to sign in. Are there other members of the public that wish to speak this morning? Any other members of the public? Not, we'll close our public comment period at this time and move on to our consent agenda. So are there any items in Commissioner motions? Commissioner Stover.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not to probe, but just to have an understanding about the request of Life Lundy, going from leaving an absence of his deputy into the chief deputy investigator. Just, that's another higher position, I understand. Okay, so then that leaves opening for the deputy. Okay, just for public information, because it is an important area that we just talked about a few months ago.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Anything else, Commissioner?
Well, I'd like to add on to that, so there's not been an identified investigator before this time, a person, is that correct?
No, there was.
There was, and who was that? Oh, Leaf was. Oh, well, no problem. I was just going for clarification. And I was the only one confused.
Okay. All right. With that, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner White, and thank you for your support, Commissioner Mills. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We'll move on at this time to our Soil and Water Conservation District, and we have Elena Hansel with us this morning. She is going to share a little bit about the Petey River Headwaters for Million River Watershed, One Watershed, One Plan implementation grant. And I've had a lot of experience working with this.
You're not actually going to be. Oh yes, I am. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. So in your I'm the county water planner and I'm the water planner for the Soil and Water Conservation District. And so am I okay? Okay. And so the county, because you adopted the One Watershed, One Plan, that is able to get implementation funding similar to when we get implementation funding for the Lake Superior North One Watershed, One Plan. So County Attorney Hicken has reviewed the document, and when we went through the process of how can we spend the funding, what can we do to help with the resources in the river headwaters, the highway department and the land services both came forward and said that they had projects. Land services is to do septic system inspections on Blue Lake and
Birch Lake.
Birch Lake, thank you. And then the highway department has some culverts that can be replaced that might not otherwise have been replaced, but this funding allows for this. So just asking for the county to enter into the fiscal agreement. I will let land services and the highway department determine who's going to manage that part of the grant, but that would just be opening up that funding source, and it's good for 3 years.
Any questions for Lynn? Any questions for Lynn? All right, well, I'd make a motion to approve the grant proceed dispersal agreement between Cook County and North St. Louis Soil and Water for a total of $122,000 to implement our Rainy Headwaters Vermilion Comprehensive Watershed Management Plan.
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Miles, for your support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Great, so thank you. Thank you on behalf of the county departments that we work closely with. So, the next is I'm at old school here with a projector and a screen, and just talk about the soil and water budget and recording here.
I just don't want to trip you.
Sorry, I was dead. Thank you.
See, I jinxed it earlier. Alright, so let's see if it's gonna work.
We do have a paper copy.
Okay. No, one more shot, I'm just gonna plug it in. Otherwise, yep, I might have to go really old school on the paper. Thinking. I like that it works before. It's not gonna work, so I'm just gonna punt a little bit. Sorry to those members of the public because my technology skills just fire with air. So I am going to talk about the Soil and Water Conservation District budgets and explain why we're asking for an increase in our budget for this year. And I want to start off just by saying thank you, first of all, to the county. We are one of only 2 in the whole state conservation districts that are able to have a partnership that we have with the county. And with the very large county that we have and our resources, and we're in a state of protection, so it's hard to get funding. We really appreciate this and that the people before us have opened up the opportunity for our district to work so closely with the county, to have office space, and just to be able to utilize the resources. So a few highlights for accomplishments. I always like to kind of celebrate with our board and my staff, what have we accomplished so far this year? If you remember, we've hired 2 new staff this year, and then we have Stephen, who's been around for 2 years, so we're still kind of new, and we've still been able just to knock out the park to get more landowner service. So today, this is as of end of July, we've had over 35 site visits for 2024. Normally, we only have about 39 or 40, so we're really increasing our site visits. We were a year behind due to lack of staff, so we're able to start catching up on that. We're still, some people were having to wait a year still, but we're trying to get out to as many people as we can. We are required with our projects to do site inspections. They're on 10-year contracts. Again, lack of staff, we haven't been able to get out for a number of years. We're now able to catch up on that. Work with those landowners again, making sure that conservation is seen in the ground, and it's been pretty cool to see these projects 6-7 years out and just performing like they should be. We're bringing landowners together. For example, the East Bay landowners are working closely with the city and everyone from the sauna all the way to the point, working together and trying to look for solutions. And what do we do with some of that sand and erosion? But we really want to make sure the beach stays there. So we're ensuring that we're involved in that process and that everything looks really good and we can keep it natural. We're working with inland lakes, beaches, streams, and Lake Superior monitoring, so we're monitoring regularly, monthly, sometimes weekly for some of these. We're working with over 20-some volunteers to accomplish this, and then the lake associations. Our AIS program is the county's programs out of our office now, and so there's numerous AIS outreach activities. We do monthly WTIP interviews. We just have a lot of outreach for best management practices. We've completed the Rain River Headwaters, one watershed one plan, which is exciting. We work with a lot of landowners now on forestry plans. That's something new that we're able to do since we have full staff again, and a lot of shoreline planting. So we're starting to enter into more contracts to increase the buffers on people's lawns. We had a successful tree sale with over 48 landowners. We have the youth from the Cook County Youth Exchange, which is part of Extension in the county, so we're excited to have them in our office for the summer. And yes, they don't sit in there, so we don't have 7 people in our office, they're in and out. And then, we're just planning on projects with partners. And an example would be, we're working closely with the Forest Service and DNR and the Highway Department to do some work on the Woods Creek area in the next couple of years. So just a lot of partnership building, a lot of work, and trying to all pool our resources so we're not duplicating work. So what's our budget look like, and why am I here to ask for more funding? Just to put this out there, when we set our budget, I normally don't set it till September or October because we're so heavily grant funded. That's when I know a lot more of when our grants will come in. So I put it together early just to try to paint a better picture and have a better understanding where we're at. I don't know our wages for next year because I know there's union negotiations going on, so I totally guessed on those. I don't know what our healthcare costs are going to be. Again, I had to guess. I guessed on a county allocation. I put it to the higher one because I'm local. And we may receive other grants. So currently we have another grant just sitting for a grant agreement. So we have another $15,000 coming in. So we have grants constantly coming in, so that's always kind of changing as to what our budget's going to be. So what does our budget look like? We have 3 funds within our budget. We have the technicians, so they are in one budget. We have administration, that would be myself and our financial administrator. And then we have a budget for the Lake Superior North 1 Watershed 1 plan. The SWCD is the fiscal agent, so we are taking on $1 million every biennium for all that liability, which increases a lot of our work and a lot of our expenses, but we are the fiscal agent for the whole Lake Superior North watershed. So we're the pass-through, so that's a separate fund over there. And I'll get into that a little bit more because sometimes people are like, well, why don't you then have $1 million? And I'll explain that also later. And then we have the AIS budget, and that's a separate budget. It has statute language. It's only for AIS. Yes.
AIS means?
Thank you. Aquatic invasive species. Yes, please help me if I go into acronym. So what are our funding sources? We have the Cook County funding, we have state funding, which includes stable funding and grant funding, and then we have federal funding, which is all grant funding. And when I say federal funding, I mean we're not just competing against the folks along the North Shore, we're competing often against all 5 Great Lakes. So I just wrote a grant, for example, and I was told, great grant, but Lake Erie folks are going to get this because we need to help people drinking Lake Erie water, and it's got that algae bloom. So even though we understand that's a resource concern where you're at, it's just not big enough. So we're tiny fish in a huge, huge pond, and it's very, very, very competitive to get grants. So our Cook County funding, how that works is we put in a request every June. We work closely with the auditor's office, and I wanted to project, you can see that the amounts have changed. We used to start with around 40-some thousand, 45,000, and I don't know the whole history of this. And then it got decreased as the county had to decrease budgets. We were also asked to decrease our budget, and then it stayed at that level. And then the state came forward and said, hey, if you can get the county to give $20,000, $25,000 more, I don't remember the exact number, we can match that and you can put that towards a project. So the county at that time did, and it went towards the City of Grand Marais Stormwater project. So while you're listening, keep that in mind, this isn't paying my personnel, my staff. This is going towards projects. So that extra money went towards the project. We're so thankful that the city did that. And then we just kept it at that 60,000 mark since then. So it's been maintaining and just kind of flat right there. Again, we're thankful for it, but times have changed it. So what's changed? I wanted to put together kind of, this is again, estimates. What does this look like? Why do you need it? Over the years, you can see our staff has changed between 2.5 full for staff up to 4 people, which is where we are right now. We function best at 4 people because we've got a lot of work to do and a lot of land. Our estimated budget for personnel costs, for 2 people in 2014 was around $140,000. With all the extra expenses, it's now up to $452,000. That's hard to get through grants. So our county allocation covers a percentage of it, which I'll show you in a minute. We have state grants. Right now, I'm just doing the 2024, around $170,000 that we know we get currently. And so I have a deficit of $221,000 I have to try to seek through grants currently. To pay staff. That doesn't include doing projects on the ground. So what's our state funding look like? You kind of let those numbers sit in. We have a natural resource block grant. The county actually receives money for shoreline, wetland conservation, and SSTS, which is subsurface sewage treatment systems. The SWCDA receives around 12 to 14,000. Sometimes it goes up. Right now we're at 20,000. It goes back down in 2026 for local water management. Wetland Conservation Act, we get $7,500. And conservation practices, we get around 18,000, and cost share goes strictly towards projects, and that's 12,000. So I'm just going to keep throwing numbers just to kind of let all this set in. SWCDA is from the Department of Internal Revenue. That's similar to AIS, where that money is just sitting there and we get it every year. Unfortunately, the numbers go down in 2026 by 20,000 because that's the way legislation wrote it. So right now we're up here, and then we go back down to around $120,000 a year. We also get a little bit of funding for One Watershed, One Plan, because we are the fiscal agent, so we're able to take a big chunk off the top and help pay for staff through that. Because again, we're required to do all the reporting. We get audited or reconciled every 50% of the funding is spent, and then at 100%, so twice. And that takes a lot of staff time to be able to do that because they're not checking just our invoices, we're checking every partner. So if we have a project, for example, the highway department, when we helped with their stormwater, it's $180,000. I have to make sure all their invoices are in place, and then I have to give it to the state. So it's a lot of manpower to do this. We're happy to do it, but it just takes a lot of time. And then federal funding, currently we have what's called an NPCA, Minnesota Pollution Control 319 program. Funding is every 3 years. We're currently in the first cycle. The next cycle is in 2027. I don't remember off the bat how much we get for that. Around 200 and some thousand. And that's strictly to work in a specific area. So that doesn't go county broad. It's in the Devil's Track, Junco, and kind of over by the Woods Creek area. It's to do specific work in there. And we have to match that 50%. So we have to have that funding apply, and now we've got to figure out where we're going to match that with, and what, and how. Under other funding, we get it as we're awarded, but as I mentioned earlier, it's really tough because we're competing with all 5 Great Lakes. Yeah.
Madam Chair. Thanks, Elena. Just a quick question. It would seem that if we're competing with all 5 Great Lakes, Lake Erie is the southernmost, it's the shallowest, it is the most impaired.
Yes.
And so is it just always going to be the case that, I mean, Lake Superior is in relatively good shape?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, so that's a great question, which it was great to have our application rejected in the sense that it spurred a lot of questions. When a lot of people, for their taxpayer dollars, don't want to put money into protection. And because we are more in a protected state up here, it's harder to fund them because we can't show a bang for the buck. But where we're saying, hey, if we spend the money now, in 10, 20, 30, 40 years when these larger events come through and the roads are washing out, it's going to be so much cheaper if our culverts are the right size. If these banks are stabilizing, they're not polluting the water, and people can still come up and recreate, or the people who live here. It's not a sell yet, but we're working on it. We're trying to change that story. We're continually putting grants in, but the same thing we always hear is it's not enough bang for your buck. because it is so expensive to do protection. So yeah, so we're always gonna have to compete, and it's always gonna be a tough sell, but it doesn't mean we can't do it, 'cause we've done it in the past. So, but people like to throw the money at the restoration and fix, and it's hard. So what does our budget look like for our numbers? I won't go too in depth, but you can kind of see we have our county fund, we have a federal fund for 2025, we have our state fund, and then so our budget is around, for the public that can't see this, is around $1 million for 2025. That includes personnel and projects. Then you'll see that $500,000, that's pass-through money. We're like the bank. That's for all our partners for one watershed, one plan. We don't see any of that money. We just say, here, go forth, give us your invoices, and we'll write a check. If we don't have the money, then we have to float that and then get reimbursed. And then we have $350. Our charges for services is literally the tree sale. So, woo, rolling it in. So, and then we have, you can see our expenditures with the personnel services. That includes the cost of our board. So we pay our board a small bit of money and some mileage. You'll see our membership dues. We have a lot of groups we're involved with, so there's a lot of dues. Other services include things like we get separately audited because we're our own government unit. So we get separately audited, so we have to pay for this. And our NCIT and a lot of other things we pay for. Supplies, it's general, and then just our other operations. So you can kind of see our expenditures for 2025 are $514,000, and if you're wondering what that goes towards, it goes towards, a lot of it towards the Little Devil's Track project that we're working closely with the highway department. Those banks are eroding due to the fact that the culvert's too small, so the velocity is just been eating at that bank, and it will continue, especially with our increased and our different fluctuations in our rate events. So we're going to come in and restabilize and redo that so that it will have longevity and it will be able to withstand more of these precipitation events. We do try to zero out our budget each year, and then you can see at the bottom it says a projected fund balance. We are required by the state, by the Board of Water and Soil Resources as conservation districts, to try to have a 6-month fund balance. You can see with our additional staff, we are currently not there, but we're doing okay. Any questions on the budgets?
I'm sorry, you said it, but could you just repeat the other services and charges?
Yeah, that's things like we are paying for our audit, paying for NCIT,
NCIT.
yeah, all those kind of things. It's very well on this. Just to show you kind of what it looks like, because again, the one watershed plan kind of trips people a little bit, and we've had to learn how to navigate that. You can kind of see where we get the funding for. We're getting funding for FY 2022. So fiscal year 2022 watershed-based implementation funding, and then we have a larger chunk for FY 24 that our office specifically gets, but they're allocated towards projects. That's not a lot of it's not for staff. A lot of it, you can see below us, the personnel out of that 342,000 is only 50,000 for personnel. The rest is all for projects with landowners. And then you can see the pass-through down below. So what is secured and what's soft funding? What does that actually look like? Why does this matter? Yes, you have a lot of money coming in and out of your office. So as you can see for the funding source breakdown, secured funding annually that I can count on is 23% of my budget. The rest of the 77% I have to write grants for, which takes 20, 30, 40 hours sometimes depending on the grant. And then we operate off of 30-some grants that we have to report on. So a lot of the time is my time is spent writing on grants and reporting on grants and shifting money around and doing all of that. So you can see we have county allocation is in the blue there, the light blue 7%. We have the unsecured state funding is 49%, that's the green. Federal for 2025 is 24%, and the state secured is 23%. So as we think about this, and people are like, well, so what? You get grants, great. A few things to keep in mind, which we are constantly trying to remind people, is that we can only charge 10 to 20% of personnel time towards the grant. That's it. So when I'm trying to match a $500,000 grant, and I can only take a little bit of personnel time, I still need to be able to pay my staff to actually manage the project, which can take 200 to 300 hours over 2 to 3 years sometimes. And when we're on Devil's Trap, we're on year 3 already. So I've got to figure out a way to carry all those hours over the time of the grant, and it's a lot of guessing, and sometimes I guess right, sometimes not, but we can only take a certain amount, and that's it. It's capped. It's been like that for all the grants. It's been like that forever. If we can't cover the costs for our staff time to manage a project from start to finish, which can take a year or 2 or 3, we've got to find other funding sources. So we'll take it out of our SWCD aid, we'll take it out of our county allocation, we take it out of our general fund, whatever we can do to pay the staff. Currently we work off of 15 grants, sometimes it's been up to 20, sometimes even more, which means we have to track every hour that we spend. So I have to figure out where am I going to bill it, where do we put it to, and then we have to show that every day that we work, and every hour. It takes a lot of time to write the grants and just to do that work. So an increase for us for the county allocation it really would be helpful. It will help the staff to be able to spend less time writing and reporting on grants. More time assisting landowners. Again, we've got a backlog with the spruce bedworm and other things going on out there. We're getting a lot more phone calls than we have in the past, and we're able to have a lot more partnerships now. And so we're able to pull more resources in, but we need to be able to have the staff to do that. We have more time to collaborate again with our other agencies and departments. We have more time for conservation projects to be installed, which is really exciting, and it just provides a better public service if we are not spending all of our time writing grants and having to deal with that. So it also provides us the opportunity to match local funds with state funds or federal funds, because you cannot match, for those who don't know, state to state, and you cannot match federal to federal. So if I have a federal grant, I gotta find something different. State, find something different. So it really offers a lot of opportunity for us. So with that is why I'm requesting from the SWCD and from the board to have an increase this year for 20,000, so from 60 to 80,000.
Thank you for your presentation. All the information and explanation is very valuable, and we'll make sure, since the public couldn't see this, that we do publish that with the minutes. And I also want to let you know that AMC, the Association of Minnesota Counties, we hope that through our policy committees, we can really try to change that decrease in your funding that's going to happen in 2026. We will work very hard for that.
Thank you.
Any questions? Commissioner?
I don't have any questions. I just want to say our community greatly values our soil and our water and our shoreline. And we're just so fortunate to have you and the team working with us. We're a standout county on that, and we'll be part of that.
Yeah, we did prove, so.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Have a good day. All right, at this time, we'll move on to item 5, Human Resources. And we have Allison Plummer with us this morning to talk about job descriptions and job grade updates.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Let's see here. All right, this morning I am bringing 2 positions forward to you for recommendation for approval of a revised job description, also paired with a change and increase in the job grade as well. So the first position is the maintenance technician with our maintenance department. Now, some background on this one. So this is one position that we are actually kind of reclassifying and regrouping into a 1 and a 2 position. That came about during the review process in getting the feedback from the supervisor, Brian, plus the 2 individuals in that role, both Troy Ohm and Jimmy Wallner. It became apparent that even though they are both maintenance technicians, that there were differences in the level of responsibility for them, even in that same position. A lot of similarities, but some differences. And so to account for those differences in level and responsibility, primarily in the role that Jimmy fills, that he takes on kind of a higher level oversight overview role, even with the presence of Brian Silence, and then outside, when Brian is absent, that we needed to account for that level of responsibility and oversight in the job description. So subsequently, we split it and made a 1 and a 2 kind of a hierarchy description. So presented in the board packet, the maintenance technician went from one singular position to a maintenance tech 1 and a maintenance tech 2 to account for those differences and similarities in those two positions. The maintenance technician 1 role, which will continue to be filled by Troy Ulm, will remain at a grade 140, while the maintenance technician 2 job description that encompasses a bit more oversight with Jimmy Wallner's position will be increased to a grade 150 instead of that 140. Then the other position is located in the county attorney's office. It's the county attorney office administrator role. That is an updated job description through the review process and an appeal process. That grade is going from a 140 to a 150.
Other questions for Allison? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the job descriptions for maintenance technician 1 and 2, as well as the county attorney office administrator.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
I'll support it.
Thank you, Commissioner White. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
And at this point, we'll move on to item 6, Attorney Hicken.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan. Okay. So the first item is our Cook County cannabis regulation and juvenile possession ordinance. Let me get that item in front of me. So the draft ordinance, which is proposed only at this point, and which commissioners have the ability to make changes to today, it's up for your consideration of enacting the ordinance because it has been duly published at this point. There have been public hearings twice on August 6th, formal public hearings in which the commissioners took comments and questions. We've also done additional public outreach, including 2 town halls, one in Colville on the 5th and one last night in Grand Marais. I've provided commissioners with some of the public comment that was received both in summary format from Colville and then in text format from public comments that came into the web page that we designed for that purpose. So the original draft that was published has been amended slightly. Those changes I've underlined and highlighted in the version that you have today, just tweaking thanks to the review by Neva Maxwell of the Land Services Department. We filled some gaps in and clarified some things. Those aren't changes significant enough to have to republish the ordinance prior to your enactment, should you wish to do so. So a couple things I need to clarify because my analysis of the timing of this ordinance has changed a little bit since I first proposed that commissioners set a public hearing. If you recall, I talked about social equity applicants and the fact that there will be a special lottery. It's set for this fall, they say early this fall. Social equity applicants have the ability, if they fall under that definition of social equity applicant, to request pre-approval for a license. And there would be a lottery of those pre-approval applications, and OCM, Office of Cannabis Management, could issue pre-approvals. As the guidelines around that process have developed and been published by OCM. We've learned that the social equity applicants don't need to define the location of their proposed business in the pre-approval process. So essentially they're saying, I qualify as a social equity applicant, here's my business plan or whatever the basic application requirements are. And they don't need to identify where it's going to be. So it could be anywhere in the state of Minnesota, rather than how I was initially thinking about this. Like they might identify, I want a place in Cook County, I want a place in Grand Marais, I want a place in Woodson or whatnot. So it's not going to be possible to even know exactly how many applicants are going to want to establish in Cook County until later on in the license application process. We do know that no licenses are going to be issued until 2025, so we have some time. There are other considerations to take into account though, so I'm saying we have flexibility in that part of the timing equation, but you know, I was reminded by the business folks in our on our committee. You know, this committee attempted to include all the stakeholders, and business interests and business development interests are a stakeholder in our cannabis ordinance that's proposed. I was reminded that if they're going to establish a business and go for a license, they have to plan. And in order to plan and invest in what they need to invest in, save up the capital or attain funding, maybe through loan, they need to know what the county's plans are in regulating these cannabis businesses. So I think those voices would probably encourage you to consider passing this ordinance sooner rather than later. I really think it is obviously up to you. You're the ones who have the authority to enact it now or enact it later. There are reasons on both sides. We have, I would say at this point, we've thoroughly studied the issue as best we can under the circumstances, given that OCM continues to add detail to the process and they just published the rules. But we began talking about this at least a year ago among county and city leadership, and then the committee has been established in discussing it and studying the issue for about 3 months. What else do I have to say about this? I would say, to summarize public comments, there was not as much public engagement as I might have predicted. I expected this to be a more divisive issue. The most divisive issues, it appears, about this ordinance are the municipal cannabis retailer enabling language, and there are arguments on both sides of that issue. And then there seems to be some confusion and also some opposition to Section 6 of the ordinance, which creates a penalty for juveniles that does not exist in state law for juveniles to possess, transport, or consume cannabis, and also to present a false ID or use somebody else's ID to attempt to purchase it or acquire it. I've been working on a detailed piece of writing, kind of in the vein of a legal memorandum, which explains that issue and why I believe it's necessary to include the juvenile prohibitions against possession, transportation, or use of cannabis. It's kind of it's complicated for me to describe, but I know I can say a couple things to just summarize. One of the concerns that's been brought up is we ought to, if we're going to penalize cannabis possession, consumption, transportation by youth, it should be penalized in the same way that we penalize alcohol consumption, underage alcohol consumption and possession. For decades, at least since 2008, in the juvenile court rules and the juvenile delinquency statutes, a court has been allowed to order a child, a minor, into inpatient treatment for chemical dependency on their third offense, their third juvenile alcohol offense, or their third juvenile controlled substance offense, no matter the level of that charge. So it would be a misdemeanor, or it would be a petty offense for a juvenile. But if it's their third time around with that type of offense, at that point the court can order them into an inpatient treatment. And that's what's called an out-of-home placement in the courts. Taking custody away from the parents and putting it into this treatment facility or into the custody of social services for placement in a treatment facility. The definition of juvenile alcohol offense, that's solid, that hasn't changed over the decades. The definition for juvenile controlled substance offense refers to a section of 152, which is our controlled substances statute, which has been repealed under the under the new cannabis law. So the definition of juvenile controlled substance offense has not been updated, and I foresee a complication in arguing to the court that illegal, unlawful possession of cannabis by a minor could fall under the definition of juvenile controlled substance offense, because that definition hasn't been updated. Therefore, I see a complication with requesting that the court order inpatient treatment after 3 times of possessing cannabis. So that all leads to, and I can back all this up with legal citations if you'd like them, I'm willing to share, absolutely. But that's what leads to my concern that there's a gap here in state law that needs to be filled somehow, if we can, through a county ordinance. It doesn't happen frequently, you know, we have a, I would say, it's a good thing that we have a very small delinquency caseload, but we have people, including youth in this community, who really struggle with controlled substances, and especially with those developing brains at age 14, 15, 16, interventions and the ability to intervene. You get the child out of the environment in which they became ill is really important and urgent. So I'm trying to open up that toolbox for prosecutors in the court. And it absolutely is a serious thing to take a child out of their home. But I want to talk a little bit about what else a court is required to find if a court is ordering a child out of their home under a delinquency case. Any order for disposition equals sentencing in the juvenile court, has to include written findings of fact to support that disposition, including why the best interests of the child are served by that disposition, and what alternatives were considered by the court and why those alternatives were not appropriate. So there has to be a real thorough analysis of why the best interests are served and what alternatives were considered and dismissed. For any disposition of court orders where a child is taken out of the home for 30 days or more, a case plan has to be ordered. And that includes, a case plan is made in consultation with the child's parents or custodian, and at a minimum, it has to include how we're going to ensure the child's safety, the child's future lawful conduct, compliance with the court's orders, and that the services to be offered and provided by the agency to the child are appropriate. There's also an analysis if a child falls under the definition of Indian child, which is a legal term. What is the cultural appropriateness of that placement? Is the child still going to have access to the cultural practices that their family might, have them involved in? Are they gonna have adequate spiritual, providers there? So I just wanted to flesh that out a little bit more, and explain that part of the ordinance. I'm here to answer any other questions that you might have. I haven't prepared language for other options, but it is true that this is not set in stone, this is not decided already. This is the point at which you can decide if you wish to set a registration requirement. The lowest limit of registrations you could set would be 1. And if you enable the municipal retail cannabis stores, those don't count against that limit of 1. If you wish to limit registrations per geographically defined area to 1 instead of 2, like we recommended in the ordinance, you can certainly do that. I would not recommend, as was suggested, that it be 1 per commissioner district. And the only reason is because we know that as populations change across the county, and they are changing, those lines are apt to change. Redistricting happens on a periodic basis. And a business that established itself within the correct zone in 1 year could potentially be in the incorrect zone the next year due to redistricting. But you can geographically define those zones however you wish. You can ditch that whole idea of geographic zones and just say 1 in the county, or 5 in the county. As long as we're doing this based on reason and analysis and not just pulling numbers out of the air.
One of the things that I've thought about a great deal based on emails and phone calls I've received, the 2 town halls I attended, as well as our 2 public hearings, and then also the presentation by the Office of Cannabis Management last Friday, is the number of registrations. I've thought about that a great deal and listened to the input. And I would like our board to consider limiting the registrations to 7 so that there's 1 per organized township and 1 within the city of Grand Marais. And that way we are parallel to what we have with alcohol. We've talked repeatedly about trying to create a parallel structure for alcohol. And so that is kind of the only change that I've thought of as I've looked at this particular model. Other commissioners? Commissioner Stowe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, Commissioner Mills and myself have been on this division. It's the most moving parts of any group I have ever been on, and it will continue to be so. I would like to have a definition for myself and the public. What is the definition of social equity? Who would be part of that?
Let me bring up my notes on that issue. I have a lot of notes.
Because I think this applies then to how many applications we are going to set for the county. That's why I want an understanding of what that means. If anybody in the state can come into Cook County, we need to have our set applications already. As you are saying, 214.
Okay. All right, this is not word for word, this is my summary of the definition of social equity. To save some time, I suppose, I'll just read my notes from our June 4th meeting of the committee. Social equity applicants are those previously convicted of marijuana offenses or their family members, military veterans, emerging farmers. So emerging farmers include those with 3+ years of labor or management for a small firm, a small farm, excuse me. Residents of high poverty areas, the OCM did create a map so you could search if your community applied to those high poverty areas. Nowhere in Cook County actually applies as a resident of high poverty area. Yep, those are the basic social equity applicant definitions.
So Commissioner Sullivan, if you say you'd like to see it only restricted to our districts, what happens in the future? In the meantime, if you have applicants from a veteran or a farmer or whatever?
So we don't approve the applicants, those are approved by the state.
Right.
And we don't know if they'll be local people or if they would be, people from greater Minnesota or even out of state. That's unknown and out of our control. I'm just looking at starting at 7 so that we have something that's manageable. We can collect data. I think it's a little more manageable for public health and human services if they're going out and doing compliance checks. And then it is something we can expand. An ordinance is something we can always change. But I think to start small, from what I'm hearing from the public, is something that our community is requesting. Other commissioners, what have you heard?
Well, I've heard great concern that 14 seems like an excessive number. And now that I had not thought about this, we can have outside the county players coming in. And that changes everything. My thought was, business owner here in the West End and East End. But it could just be somebody completely different coming in. And yes, they would be here. I think 14 is too many. How many liquor stores do we have?
7.
We do have 7
Yeah, so
liquor
this would
stores
be
in
the
the county?
same as the number of activities.
Well, that seems more manageable. But the whole thing is, we don't know how much time, how much paperwork is going to be involved with setting up the oversight of these businesses at all. I mean, since everything's changed. And there's the security issues, and there will be.
Yeah, and that's what I agree is the importance of making a decision now so that the people that are in our county that do want to start businesses have time. To be fair to them. Commissioner Mills.
I'm a big fan of starting slow and working through it as the rules change and as our understanding changes and as our community understands things more. So I think there's a lot of wisdom in the suggestion. My hesitancy is that when we set the number, it's right now I think we're all thinking about just retail. And what the number entails is also the micro and the meso businesses. And what those are basically the grow it to sell it, the whole process. And our agriculture and farming community is something that I want to support as much as we can. And so that's on my mind because it would include that. So if we did set it at 7, I'm assuming there would be 7 retailers, but then there would not be an allowance for any other operations, such as the grow to sell. Or they could be just grow to sell, in which case, my concern is moot. But I think that's a lot more involved of a business, and would be much more difficult to set up. And so that's where I'm hesitating, is because of that. I'm also trying not to get too worried because I do expect we will be revisiting this and updating it again. Just again, as we learn more, as the rules evolve. So that's what I'm thinking.
Question I have for Attorney Hicken, and I think I know the answer, but I'm going to verify it. So, if I'm correct, we cannot control an application for a mezzo or a micro business. That is an application that the state approves, is that correct?
The state licenses micro businesses and mezzo businesses. We, as a local government, have the ability to require those types of businesses to have a local registration only if they hold that retail endorsement as well. So you could have a micro business that only grows and produces the product for a different retailer. Or you could have, and that's the type of business we don't have authority to require a registration for. But if that type of a business has the retail endorsement, then we can require a registration. And this ordinance, as proposed, does require a registration for those micro and mezzo businesses with the retail endorsement.
Other questions?
Yes,
Commissioner White?
I have a concern about out-of-home placements. How many kids, and I see public health is here too, but how often do we have to create a case plan? How many of our youth actually go to out-of-home placements in this county because of substance abuse? Do we have like 2 a year or 25, or I have no idea.
Something more than 2 and less than 25, I will say then.
So we
and then, can I just clarify, what I've been talking about is delinquency placements. There's another whole type of placement called child protection placement. And the court's considerations sometimes are similar between the two, but they're different types of findings.
Where do our youth go?
Let's see. So I've been out of that game for a little bit, but when I was in it, North Woods in Itasca, North Homes in the Duluth area, at times to Arrowhead Juvenile Center, which has more and more over the years a treatment type environment versus a correctional type environment. Itascan is another placement. Our kids have gone as far as, across the state when needed, when their level of care is high and the level of security of the facility is needed. There's neither inpatient nor outpatient chemical dependency treatment for kids in Cook County. That's in person. Of course, now everything is available by Zoom and by remote option. The efficacy of that type of treatment, especially for kids, is kind of questionable.
So they would go, if they were to have inpatient, if they would travel down the highway to Duluth, would they be able to secure inpatient help as opposed to being placed, in a resident home someplace?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about when I talk about the out-of-home placements for treatment. I'm talking about being placed in an inpatient treatment facility, specifically for kids. You don't want to mix adults and kids.
One other, I'm not sure that the county and city are on the same page exactly yet, and so our ordinance includes allowing for licenses for the Grand Array, but we're not necessarily on that same page yet. So as we may or may not pass this, Grand, the city itself may do their own thing. And I just want us to be aware of that. So how our ordinance is written may not be, the city has not handed over our regulator.
As a
license.
delegated, yeah.
Thank you. Hasn't delegated to the county at this point, so, I'm not entirely comfortable assuming that delegation, or having that in there. Again, very comfortable revisiting and amending and changing this, so I'm not gonna get too bent out of shape of that, but just want to bring that up.
Commissioner Wills, it wasn't, if I did include in there the delegation of the city's authority to the county, that was not my intent.
No, it didn't explicitly say that it has been delegated, but I do believe,
It's 2.6.2 where it says cannabis retail business registration shall be limited to for organized township and the city.
Yes, yeah. There's other language though, that existed in the model ordinance that I removed because we don't have the city's agreement that, it delegates its authority to register to the county. So that's been removed. But yeah, you're right, it does, the city can, after the ordinance is passed, if they don't like the way we've set up things, or they wish to add controls, or change the limit of registrations within the city, they can pass their own ordinance. And, you know, we've had city representatives as a part of our committee this whole time. And that's been their stated intent. They want to see what the county passes and see whether that meets their needs or not. I did not get any comment back from the city representatives on section 7, which is the enabling of a city municipal business.
comments still on 2.6 from the city?
No.
Okay, yeah. And again, I don't have a beef with it. I just wanted to make sure we're aware that that is a factor here, and it is kind of a chicken egg situation, right? So, also just want to thank you for all your work on this thus far. I didn't explicitly say that in the town hall last night, but stellar work, and also with public health. Just the whole team is really outstanding. I attended the community health board meeting virtually yesterday, and we are way ahead of the other counties in the region, just as far as our engagement, our discussions, our progress, research, and really show that. So, thank you. There was one typo that I saw. Yeah, I have to say it.
Where?
You share.
Section 7, first line, Cook County and the City of Grand Marais each.
Oh. Yep.
And I thought you were saying fancy, so
It's illegal.
derived from French.
Thank you, I'll get that changed.
Any other questions or discussion?
I do, I want to recognize the concerns too, just about the burden on staff and for compliance checks, and also we don't quite know what's all going to be involved, and so I am rolling around the idea of lowering it to try to better understand that, rather than jumping right in. I haven't heard that it's going to be over the top, how we're not going to be able to handle this, and I do think there's going to be enough visibility probably with the businesses that are licensed that anyone trying to pull something, I don't think will be, that won't go well. So kind of weighing the burden versus the reality of out of compliance, but just thinking about that too.
wanted to add, I did have an opportunity to speak with establishments, 13 that we have in the county that are already selling low-dose edibles and THC beverages about Section 4. They're very comfortable with that and anticipated there would be something additional. They were thinking the state might have something additional, but there have been no concerns about that.
And that's a good thing I'd like to clarify just after public comment. We do know how many businesses in Cook County are selling those lower potency products because they are required to register with the state. The state publishes a map which identifies where those businesses are. And we anticipate that there will be some additional regulations issued by the state in the future. This ordinance is going to fill a gap, I guess. And Chair, there are other members of the committee here that I want to recognize as helping out with this whole process. Tim Nelson from Land Services, not an official member of the committee, but has helped in the subcommittee for drafting the ordinance. Chris Homack is here, and Grace Greenager is here. Both of them have been really helpful in the public engagement process and in ordinance drafting. And Rocio, also from Public Health, is here, has been kind of a surrogate for Grace when she can't be here. And then, of course, Todd over there helped us with a lot of the public engagement too. We really made it a big effort here to allow for the voices of the community to be heard on the cannabis ordinance, imagining that it might be a divisive issue and an issue of concern. So I'm really proud of those efforts that we put in. Regardless of the number of comments we received or the number of people who showed up, we made space for them. I just thought that was really important here. And Chair, I don't know if it's if you have time for it or wish to allow for any comment of the committee members if they want to respond to Commissioner concerns.
I was going to actually suggest that members of the committee come forward and speak if they wish or respond to any comments or questions we've had. So if anybody would like to come forward. Thank you, Chris. So coming forward is Chris Homack. For those of you that are unaware, operates a store in Lutzen, Clearview General Store, and was a citizen member of the community.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit about it. I was talking earlier about the idea that we might be going too fast or we need to slow down. There are a lot of business people that have come to myself and Linda Jerk as the Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce interested in the possibility of starting a cannabis business. And not just the retail side, but also the cultivation, the manufacture, wholesale, delivery. There are so many different license types. And in reality, the county can only limit retail registrations. So we may still have cultivation, we may still have a manufacturing business, we may have a delivery business. I doubt we'll have a wholesale business just based on, it would be odd to center a wholesale business in Cook County. But that being said, we're only talking about retail. On the retail side, the 14 businesses may seem like a large number. However, when you look at all of the other barriers to entry in this type of business, there are a lot. When you look at Cook County as a whole, the amount of commercial real estate that's open and available to build on. We all know the costs of building a business or a home or anything like that. Outside of Grand Marais, you have to add on $250,000 just for well and septic. I mean, there are significant barriers to entry to build something. Then you look at commercial rentals that are available. There are not many, if any, commercial rental spaces available to operate a business. So there are two barriers. And then you look at the rules that have come out from OCM about retail businesses and what they're going to require for security and for lighting and for inventory management. the OCM right now in their draft rules is going to require daily inventory uploads to the state website. So in order to track to the eighth of an ounce or half-eighth of an ounce or one gunny and individual batch numbers, there's a lot of technology that's going to be required on a business owner to be able to manage those pieces. The cost just to build out those systems is high. And then you build out a space, and where will that space be? And then the inventory. I mean, it's not a cheap undertaking. So the idea that there would be 14 local business owners, or even those from out of the county that want to come in and start a business here, I don't see it happening. The idea with the 14, when we were talking about it, and Linda Jurek and myself brought that to the Cannabis Committee, was that it allowed for competition, business competition, in that right now there's only one liquor store allowed. I myself, if I wanted to sell strong beer or wine in my store, would not be able to. And so it allows for variations. I don't believe that there are going to be 2 retail dispensaries in each space that is listed in that ordinance, because competition will allow it, and there isn't enough business for that. But there might be a micro or meso business as well as a retail operation. And so we wanted to try and allow for that in our recommendation. And then, were there any other questions for me, I guess? I mean, there are a lot of moving pieces, and I understand it's not an easy thing to say yes or no to this. I believe that as OCM comes out with more guidelines and updates their draft rules until they have a final version, there will be changes. But businesses need a chance to be able to start planning and start looking at whether it's even feasible to open this type of business in the space that they're looking at. And there will be significant time and money put out by any business owner that wants to do this. And so the more time that anyone would have to plan and figure that out would be appreciated.
Thank you so much. Commissioner White?
So in your conversations with business owners, are there upwards of more than 7 people that are businesses that have expressed kind of serious interest in examining or possibly proceeding?
I know I myself have looked at it for my property in Lutzen. I know that there are at least 1 or 2 other possible retail operations in Lutzen that have commercial space that they're already operating some kind of business out of, and would be able to build out or retrofit their space. So, I mean, there is interest. Whether anybody will continue on once they've read through the rules and see what's there, I do believe that there might be more in Grand Marais. I haven't heard as many, but I do know that there are 3 or 4 people that have come to talk to me about retail operations on the west end of the hole, beyond myself. And they're all varying sizes too. I mean, one was hoping to have a small greenhouse and grow and sell that flower, but then also with the micro and meso retail endorsements, I believe they can also buy from a wholesaler, at which point then they would be able to grow and sell their product, but then also sell other smaller pieces and paraphernalia and things like that. And so there have been those businesses that have come forward, yes. But
Great question.
Well, I guess I would not want to squelch, not aspirations, but I would like to have our business owners have the opportunity to decide, but then competition and the number of people that will, the amount of product that will actually be sold will, I would expect, to be much more limited than if you were in, say, even Duluth or Minneapolis. So competition will be fierce, and they would have to figure out their investment. Would it be worth taking that chance?
absolutely. But you also have to look at the seasonality of the North Shore is starting to go away in some ways. We still have our shoulder seasons of April and November, but with added events and other weather pieces and environmental pieces that have come into play in the recent years, those shoulder seasons are getting smaller and smaller. So it's not as much of a seasonal area as it used to be. That being said, there's still winter and there's still summer. But those two seasons, we see 1.5 million visitors a year. And so that 1.5 million visitors a year, on top of local residents, do keep 7 liquor stores open year round. And there is call for additional, because we have 7 liquor stores, full liquor stores. We have a total of, is it 6 or 7 other businesses that sell 3-2 beer, because Minnesota is still a 3-2 beer state, and we're the last one. But the liquor ordinance in and of itself, there are 7 full liquor stores, yes, but there are still 7 other businesses that sell 3-2 beer, and there's Voyager Brewing, and there's North Shore Winery. So that liquor ordinance, when you say it's only 7, well, actually it's closer to 15, of varying sizes and varying degrees.
Other questions for Chris?
Thank you again.
Not a question, but just want to thank you for your work on the committee. Your perspective is extremely valuable and helpful. I just really appreciate your reasoning and thoughtfulness and your openness as well.
Thank you. Thank you again for allowing me to share my piece.
Thank you so much. We have Grace Grenadier from Public Health and Human Services. Grace has served on the committee as well. Thank you for coming this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I would say, I think kudos to the Attorney's Office for bringing together such a representative group of individuals from different parts of the county, different backgrounds around the issue. There are several provisions in the draft ordinance that came directly from public health regarding the buffer zones around schools, daycares, parks, with youth-serving attractions like a playground or an athletic field. Also, some of the advertising and product placement pieces, both for the low potency THC, hemp-derived THC beverages that are already in the community and the edibles. So those are some of the pieces that public health provided direct input on. With regards to the compliance checks, this is also something that we need to establish. We frankly have needed to establish it since before the pandemic, and have not for tobacco retailers. It's also in our tobacco ordinance. So my plan in terms of compliance checks is going to be using the existing staff to do the work. I would appreciate starting at a lower level with the 7 retailers, just as we get our feet on the ground and develop a good process. But I also understand the point of view of the business community and having that competitive atmosphere. From a staffing perspective and public health perspective, I appreciate the approach of starting with a smaller number of licenses and then allowing for revisions to the ordinance over time as needed, I suppose. The way that the compliance checks work is that we would work with law enforcement, and we would also work with young people. So the people doing the compliance checks are between the ages of 17 and 20. They enter that establishment and attempt to purchase the product, and if they're able to do so, then the business does not pass their compliance check, and there's penalties written for the ordinance for that, which you're going to have to read them off if I don't have them off the top of my head. But that's how the compliance check generally works. In terms of workload for staff and the public health team, I think some of the participation in the committee on an ongoing basis is really studying impact. So we have done some brainstorming and will continue to do so. What is the data that we want to track about the impact of adult use cannabis legalization in Cook County? So some of those data points would be data from our emergency department, from our clinic regarding visits related to cannabis use. It's all de-identified data, so there would be perhaps a cross-sector partnership at that with law enforcement and our highway department on impaired driving and other, reasons that someone might come in contact with law enforcement for a cannabis-related reason. So tracking that piece, also working with our schools to see if there are athletes so student athletes in the high school have to abstain from using substances, and if they do not do so, then there are penalties to participating in athletics. So they already have that data, so tracking that data through the schools. Also through the Minnesota Student Survey, which does track use in the past 30 days among youth, and also perception of harm with different substances. Will that perception of harm change after adult use cannabis has been legal for a longer period of time? So those are some of the things that we're looking to track. We also have Rocio Rivas here. She's a youth prevention specialist. She's going to be starting to do more work that we haven't done in the past and within our team on substance misuse prevention with that younger school age 10 to 24 population. So we'll have the capacity through grant funding to really dedicate more time to doing prevention that we did not have in the past. And that's just sort of serendipitous. That's not tied to the cannabis legalization at all. We're also still awaiting what type of grant funds will come through the state to our county to do public health education and outreach specifically around cannabis. So that amount was lowered by about 2/3 in the last legislative session, but that was funding that I had hoped and continue to plan to use to support staff time in doing work on cannabis. So happy to answer other questions from the call.
Any other questions for Grace?
Just this, 714, fluctuation. I really appreciate your input there, and would be concerned if 14 was going to be too burdensome. I do have a lot of confidence in you, your team, and your processes, and so
it's hard to tell because
right.
we haven't done them yet.
Exactly.
So that's why I'm saying I'd appreciate to start lower, and then once we have an established process and a little more experience, to consider expanding. Because I do think it's going to be impossible to go back. If we say a larger number and then we decide to go back, that's just not going to work.
Commissioner Stowe.
Well, we do say up to 14. 12? Up to 12? Why is 14, we decided 14 was going to be the max?
So
We
go ahead.
Okay, 14 comes from 2 per zone. And since we were kind of building our model off of the off-sale liquor store licenses, those are 1 per zone. We went to 2 per zone because of what Chris was describing, where we wanted to provide an opportunity to have at least 1 retailer and at least 1 meso or micro business with retail endorsement in each zone. Okay. That's how we came up with that.
That's how we did it. Thanks for the refresher. Well, since we're not a full board, I think we need to be a full board when we decide to pass this. So my recommendation is that we don't do anything today until we have a full board.
So do you want to make a motion to table it?
Yes, I'll second that. Wait, I make a motion to table it. Okay, then your turn.
Deb, you're going to second that?
I am.
All right. Any further discussion? Commissioner Rice.
Just as long as we're talking about this, I wanted to reiterate kind of where I've been in the process, starting with 1 is kind of where I wanted to be. And my rationale, again, was to corner the market, right? If we wanted to do a muni. everyone I've talked to, whether there's support for Muni or not, doesn't want no competition, right? So even if they support the Muni, they don't necessarily think it should be only the Muni or one other one. And so I'm internalizing that feedback and I'm on board with that. And so then after that, I jumped on board with the 14 because I really appreciate that rationale and I have some flexibility. In my younger years, I resented that we only had 7 liquor stores. Now I don't have a problem with it. It's not that much of an inconvenience. But I also want to respect the idea of competition and flexibility for the businesses. So just wanted to, in case I haven't recently enough, expressed my thoughts on that whole journey. That's where that comes from. I think it's also wise and fair to have the full board to talk about this more. And after Attorney Hicken's kind of timeline explanation, I feel a lot more comfortable waiting to decide on this. For a while there, it seemed like we had to get on this or else. So I appreciate that further insight. And I really appreciate just the community discussion that this has spurred. And I'm hoping that we'll get more input as time goes on. I would like to know a little bit more of what will it entail to modify the ordinance. We have to do a first hearing, right? Reading and then another. Is that the?
Yeah, for a significant amendment after enactment, is that
From
what
7 to 14 would be significant, right? Yes, after.
Right, yes. Yep, it's the same process as to enact, so the board needs to set a public hearing to consider the amendment. We need to publish the amendment and allow for public comment during the public hearing and then enact the amendment.
Other discussion? I guess I would like to, if we table this item, to make sure that we are considering it at our meeting in 2 weeks, because I don't feel it's fair to those people that are looking at starting a business to continue to make them wait. Time is of the essence for them to get their things in order. So I hope we can put that on the agenda in 2 weeks from today. Commissioner.
Other technicality is just about the public hearing. I'm not sure that we closed that. And do we want to? Maybe we don't. We're tabling it and we can leave it open. But there.
We were just talking about the timing. If there need to be another hearing, would there be adequate time to consider it at the next meeting? Or would it have to wait till September? So that's just another issue.
I'm sorry. And it might be the case that we need another public hearing before we can pass an ordinance.
Well, if we are significantly changing it from 14 to 7, that would require another hearing.
Even though we haven't passed anything.
I don't know the answer to that question, and I wish I did.
And maybe that's not pertinent today, but I appreciate that line of thinking.
Commissioner.
But we must decide we need to get out in front of the states. Right, whatever they propose. So
Well, and I just think for our businesses
Yeah.
who are waiting, we need to make a decision, and I would stress that we need to make it soon. Right, other discussion.
So if we don't have a full board at the next meeting, we should probably, I would be willing to make a decision, make the call then, even if we don't have a full board.
I would certainly be willing to do this.
So it's only 2 weeks.
And so back to the public hearing side of things, it's still open, right?
Yeah, it's open until the insurance goes up.
Okay. And I'm grateful for that. I think it's good to continue to get input and feedback. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes.
And we couldn't, even if we weren't going to table it today, we couldn't pass the ordinance or deny it before closing.
Accurate.
Okay, thank you.
And one last thing I would just like to let the business community know is I'm really all for competition. I mean, I really want to help our business because they're here. They're supporting our community, so it's just what I'm leaning towards.
So we have a motion to table this till 2 weeks and a second. Anything further? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. It's tabled. All right, I was gonna suggest we take a short break at this point in time, and then when we come back, we'll have an update on issues related to Commissioner District 1 and 4. Thanks. So we are returning now from a short break, and we are on attorney item 6B.
Okay. Next up is, so I wanted to make sure commissioners were aware of some court action that's been taken in the last couple of weeks related to the race for District 4 Commissioner, because I expect you may have been curious about what's going on with that issue or have gotten questions. So we just put some time on the agenda for me to talk about this. So our dear citizen, Arvis Thompson, had been moved from one district to another through the redistricting process in 2022. Or maybe she had stayed in one district, but at any rate, because of population changes in the 2020 census, in 2022, we needed to move district boundaries, as commissioners are aware of every single commissioner district in the county. The boundary between District 1 and District 4 in one section became County Road 14 on the east end of the county. The map identified a section of County Road 14 as the even numbered addresses being in one district and the odd numbered addresses being in another district. So as is often the case, one side of the road neighbors were in District 4 and the other side of the road neighbors were in District 1. That's the map that this board approved after, as part of redistricting in accordance to all of the rules. So after a public hearing and public comment and after a publishing in 2022. Then what happened is, and I'm going to ask Mr. Powers to interrupt and correct me if I'm getting any of this wrong, because I'm just relying on my memory. The statewide voter registration system is a system created by statute that the state is in charge of establishing and maintaining, but which relies upon data that comes from the counties. And part of that data is which addresses belong in which county districts. When the county gathered its data, to send into the state for the SVRS, or statewide voter registration system, it used GIS mapping data. They layered census data with county road data and created a data set which was then sent into the state. When proofing that data, they missed an error along County Road 14, which made it appear in the list that certain residents of County Road 14 were in District 4 when they were actually, according to redistricting, in District 1. And a couple of those residents appeared to be in District 1 when they were actually in District 4, according to the map. The map is the official districting. The list is what is often relied upon to reference, including when somebody applies to be on the ballot for a commissioner race. Auditor staff are looking at SVRS to, check, is this person in the district in which they're applying for candidacy. So when Ms. Thompson applied for Commissioner District 4 race, which was open, auditor staff looked at the list and they said, okay, looks like you're in District 4, and accepted her application. It was a couple weeks later that an error was discovered. This error with SDRS was discovered. And unfortunately that came after the period in which any candidate can withdraw their candidacy. And so then it became a question, well, first of all, Ms. Thompson was immediately informed, which was required under the statute by the auditor, and Auditor Powers explained to her the consequences and the options. If she were to remain on the ballot and win the election, she stayed in district where she currently lives, she would actually be ineligible to serve in that role. But she was not technically ineligible then, nor is she until a court action would she be technically ineligible until 30 days before the election. Because I'm sure you've known from your research and whether you can be eligible for commissioner in your own district, you have to have moved to that district or lived in that district by 30 days before the general election. That hasn't happened yet. The general election is November 5th. Okay, so that was one option. The other option is if Ms. Thompson were to agree and say, I'm not planning on moving, I agree that I'll be ineligible for this commissioner seat if I don't move, then the county could file a court action and ask for a court order determining her ineligible and opening up a vacancy. A vacancy in a nonpartisan office like county commissioner, if there's only one or two candidates who have filed, can then reopen the filing period to add a commissioner candidate or another candidate to that seat. And in the end, after doing her own research and her own investigation and looking at different options, that's what Ms. Thompson did agree to us moving forward with a court action. I quickly drew up a petition, which I filed in Brady's name. Brady signed an affidavit to go through all of the facts that I just described to you. And we served both Ms. Thompson and Ann Sullivan, who was a party because she was also a candidate in District 4. Judge Hinkie heard that case really quickly. It got on the calendar. The hearing went smoothly, and I want to profusely thank Ms. Thompson for her patience and apologize for the error that caused so much confusion. I thank Commissioner Sullivan also for her patience and for appearing at that hearing on very short notice. The judge did declare a vacancy, and then the filing period was reopened. And we had to get all of this done very quickly because we need to start preparing ballots, or the auditor's office does. Is it today?
Tomorrow. Tomorrow is the official date of the calendar when they suggest we start the process.
So that filing period was reopened as of Wednesday last week.
Closes today.
Closes today.
5 p.m.
Did her, yep, go ahead.
And one candidate has to file.
Yes.
And so now there's time because there'll be a withdrawal period. So if the candidate or anybody else that comes in today changes their mind, they still have 2 days, just like in the regular filing period, they can withdraw and leave it as it is now. But if it goes forward, there's time now that candidate will be on the general election ballot.
So the process worked. There was another candidate who filed, and we all learned a lot about election law. This little part of it, yes.
How did we come to light?
It was a neighbor that was close to ours who, I'll back up a little bit because this error on this section of the road affected everybody on that section of road. Everybody was reversed. If they were odd in this district, for some reason, it reversed them, just in these two. Not on the map, but just in the paper documentation of the GIS. And so everybody that did vote, who were registered voters, have been voting incorrectly in the 22 elections, in the primary and the general, and in the presidential primary this year. But there weren't any local candidates that anybody went, aha, these are generally state and countywide issues that were on the ballot. And it wasn't until a neighbor noticed that his neighbor was filing in District 4, and he went, wait a second, I don't think I'm in District 4, am I? Even though he'd been getting a ballot. But you have to look at the bottom. You have to expect that there's a problem. At the bottom, it tells you what precinct you're in on your ballot. But if you don't have any reason to think there's an issue, you don't look at it, because the candidates are fine. So no one had noticed it until then, because it was so close in person, and called and asked. And at first, we checked and said, yep, it's correct, it's District 4. And then went to the maps, because somebody asked, well, let's just go check the maps, and the maps were different. So that started it going, and then we spent the rest of the week making sure that this error didn't occur anywhere else in the county, and contacted Argus almost immediately. First contacted the GIS staff and Molly, and then Argus. So, here we are today.
So we stand ready for your questions about that process.
My big concern is that we make sure that we have procedures in place so it doesn't happen again. It's a very difficult situation, and I appreciate that Argus handled it so graciously and so patient and thoughtful, and I just want to make sure we have a process in place where we double check these things.
That was discussed all during that week. So GIS staff was immediately looking at plans for how, we still don't know technically how this happened. It's some technical glitch within that system, but Kyle was quickly going to go home how to prevent that in the future. I believe that using a system like that. And two, we will be double checking every line change with a map, not just with the paper instructions. And so we actually make every change to every person on every line in our office. And so those are actually typed into the statewide voter system using this GIS printouts. And so once you get done with that, you double check that, and you think it's the same information. Most of it is, but you will be double checking with maps at the same time. Each and every changed area. 10 years. Not 10 years.
8 more years.
It's my understanding too, a large part of this was the loop, right? Like that's.
What do we think?
Okay.
I mean, it seems like it was something to do with, this is getting into the weeds, mapping systems, left and right, depends where we start. This road hit a major highway 61 from both the east and the west end. The system has to know we're starting from here and we're going this way. So left means this way, right means that, because it's different if you're starting from there. And we think potentially when it went to this area, it's the same on both sides of the road. And when you try Lake Road, then suddenly it's two sides. We think there's something in there that it's thought. That it went, oh no. We think you're starting over here, something like that, and it reversed. And something to do maybe with the little small areas, because GIS does not because you're using these federal census blocks. Use that form. And the census blocks don't match in this, even in the mapping data, completely with the roads, that they should. You've got a little bubble over here, a bubble over there, a bubble here, a bubble there. And so we went through, even as a committee, saying, well, let's fix this. Boom. Let's put that bubble where it belongs, because it's showing up on that side of the road. It really belongs as that district, not that district, things like that. So we're trying to fix that with GIS. We did it for the GIS staff. They came in later and fixed more of those poles. You have since then. And something about fixing poles and having a system that didn't totally light up with the roads. And so I think that's what we're going to work on, to have a system that, when we're looking at it, it's going to line up exactly with the roads and not have the poles. That's the plan. GIS side. The plan on our side is you look at the maps and anywhere it changes. Both sides should have been matched.
Yeah, I was just trying to think of other preventative measures and identifying the loop potential issue. So maybe that isn't part of it. I'm just thinking of County 48, or there's other groups that we can, just be aware of when we do redistricting again.
Doesn't happen often. The Secretary of State's office could remember, they haven't all been with the 30, but once there, can remember once.
I think we were also hoping to do some census block work for the next redistricting too, right? Wasn't that, because isn't there something we can do, especially when we get into the more densely populated areas, to be able to have more?
There is a potential to do that. I don't know this kind of a high level.
Right.
I wanted to get into that here. I don't know how many counties go into that, but it's a possibility that actually in the federal census block itself, potential changes that may make more sense.
Yeah, my memory was that you were saying it's quite a process and it'd be more appropriate at the next redistricting. And we'd have to do a lot of preparation for that. But I know a lot of our, Commissioner Johnson and I's challenge with the redistricting and the mapping had to do with those blocks. And say like in Grand Parade, when it's much more highly densely populated, or other areas too, just because they're odd shapes and oftentimes odd numbers that make it very difficult to make things make sense. That's 8 years, I guess, on the road. I just want to make sure we're thinking about it and trying to plan for it as best we can.
Reminds me of Google Maps, where you are going down a road that they say you have a map for that road, and it's like, oops, this is the end. So, appreciate all your work on that.
Any other questions or comments for either Brady or attorney? All right. Well, we will move on to item C, which is dispute over work in the tennis courts. And for this, we need to move into a closed session authorized by 13D.05 subdivision 3B for attorney-client privilege matters. And is there a motion to move into closed session? Thank you, Commissioner Sterling. Is there support? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are into closed session. So we have returned from our closed session, and we are right at this point on attorney item D, which is to consider and approve an amendment to insurance requirements in the Flintlock shooting range lease. Attorney Higgins.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know that I need to make a bunch of comments about this. You've heard from Justin Rexroad of the Flintlock Range Association. He accurately described the issue, and the reason I am recommending that the board lower it to $1 million, lower the insurance coverage minimum to $1 million per occurrence, is because under Minnesota statute, municipalities' tort claim limits are down at $1 million already when they relate to if the claim involves a nonprofit organization engaged in or administering outdoor recreational activities, funded in whole or in part by a municipality, or operating under the authorization of a permit issued by a municipality. So if you recall, this shooting range, which definitely falls in the definition of outdoor recreational activities, is taking place on land owned by the county by use of a lease. So I do believe we qualify under that little exception for tort limits. So there is virtually no risk to the county in lowering the amount, and it's going to make this the range a possibility, whereas otherwise it would be cost prohibitive.
Any questions for the attorney? If not, is there a motion?
So moved, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support? Thank you, Commissioner Starling. Motion and support to amend the insurance requirement for Flight Block Range Association from $1,500,000 per occurrence to $1 million, which is consistent with statutory tort limits. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Auditor Powers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. These will be the two shortest agenda items of the day.
Thank you.
So, first is pretty standard. Canvas board membership for elections. We've got a primary election happening today. And the Canvas board, I scheduled it for Thursday, August 15th at 10 a.m. We have an option Thursday or Friday. We could change that today if you wanted to. I got it set up. So change it. So, in the commissioners, we would canvass the results of the 2024 state primary election. So it has to be canvassed, which means reviewed and certify the results. And the canvass board consists of the court administrator, the county auditor, the mayor of our most populous city, and two members of the county board. So that's the members who are not candidates at this particular election. And so you're all eligible, but Commissioner Sullivan is a candidate in the general election. And if at all possible, not only be chosen for this. So any member, so the board could select one or two or three of you to attend the canvas board or a designee. And in the absence of that, the county auditor will select members of the public or not the candidates for office. So those are the options. And the same thing, the court administrator can appear or designate someone, and the same with the mayor. The same.
Well, I'd like to recommend that we not consider Commissioner Johnson at this time because of her personal situation. So of the three remaining commissioners, are there willing to serve on Thursday, August 15th at 10 a.m.?
I'm not available. I'm very comfortable having the auditor's office as well, so as a delegate.
Commissioner White or Commissioner Sterling?
I'm comfortable with the auditor's office selecting somebody. Can't get to it. I think I have something to say.
I'd have to rejigger a couple of things, so. But I support Commissioner Mill's suggestion.
Thank you. And the other, just to know that 3 members of the canvas board is quorum. Yes. So, yeah, that'll be fine.
Okay. Thank you. Right, we'll move on to item B, which is state payment in lieu tax 2024.
And so this is information you're already aware of, because we talked about it when the law was passed. It was for 2024, and so now we're seeing the results. We just got paid for the 2024 state in lieu. Total amount is $576,931. A year ago, prior to this legislative change, we received $430,433. So this is the changes that were primarily was the change in the dollars per acre of the natural resources land from $2 to $3. So 50% higher. And then there was another change for total acreage, and we fit under one of the categories. So you take our total built acreage of all the various descriptions, and we get 8 cents on our total acreage of 145,000. So in addition, we get this 11,619 under that category. There's some options for how it breaks out, and most of it is clearly for levy relief. And the only one that is not an option, or I should say is an option, is there's a little bit, $2,771 of county administered other acreage. It can go to parks, or it can go to levy relief. On here, I assume you want it all for levy relief, in which case $531,000 is in our budget this year for levy relief, and then $35,000 goes to resource development for parks, trails, etc. And then the other $10,505 is for the towns, get a small part, here's some of the acreage in the towns. And the school is $202.70. And I'll mention this, that what pushed that through was really a bipartisan effort in our state senator household. And Milligard, they championed this at the AMC meetings. And there were 9 authors on the House side. 11, I'm sorry, not 9, 11 with Roger Strauba and Natalie Zelendikar were authors on that side. And on the Senate side, Senate Minority Leader Eichhorn, District 6, and Senator Farnsworth, District 7 up here were also authors, and there were 5 authors of the Senate version. So I had wide bipartisan support.
It's really good news for us as well as a number of other counties, and it shows how our work together, and in particular our work at AMC, is so important.
So this is just information.
Thank you for sharing some good news. Any other questions or comments? All right, we'll move on to item 8, Administrator York.
Right, thank you, Madam Chair. So, first item under my section is the proposal to change the recorder's position from elected to appointed. This was something that we discussed at the July 23rd meeting. At that time, you approved the publication of a resolution affecting this change. And I should say, I don't recall, so I haven't received any public comments on this, and I don't know if we need to, where we are in actually collecting those comments. Do we have to have like a hearing on this?
You have to provide an opportunity for public comment before the board vote on resolution.
So, I mean, it has been published, but people are aware of it. And so anyway, the one thing to note about the attached resolution, as it says in the cover sheet, it has been amended to remove Holly's name from the original version. So it basically just says that, in trustee's retirement, that we would be going through a regular recruitment process to select or to recruit candidates and then have a review process and interview candidates for the position. So. Are there questions about the resolution or the proposal to convert the position to appointment?
Well, based on my research and looking at data from AMC and talking to Cook counties, and just looking at the job description and what's required, I think it's a very appropriate way to have it. I'm very supportive of this from the commissioners.
Yeah, that's the way.
Good time to reevaluate.
So we've had time for public comment, and we're allowed to make a motion on this resolution.
Attorney.
It would be my advice, Chair, that you just make a call for public comment right now in this room, make a record as to whether there is anyone who steps forward to provide public comment before the motion is made.
So at this time, are there any members of the public that wish to comment on this? Seeing or hearing none, now we can entertain the motion.
I'd like to make a motion to pass the resolution which modifies the Cook County Court position from elected position to an appointed position.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support? Thank you, Commissioner Sterling. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Board. Item 8B is the memorandum of agreement with the University of Minnesota Extension Program. This MOA is something that was presented to the board at the committee of the whole meeting back in June. The main feature of it is after holding costs constant for the period of the last MOA, there is a proposal to increase the cost to $100,000 annually starting in 2025, and then there's a 3% cost escalator for the 2 subsequent years. And I'll just say, I mean, having worked with Sarah Weil and with the extension team over the last several years, I feel that this is really working out well for the county. It's given us access to extension resources that previously we didn't really have direct access to. And I would just like to echo what I heard earlier in the meeting in terms of the level at which Sarah is doing this job. She is really hitting on all cylinders and doing a fantastic job, both as the extension educator and the community center director. She's done a lot of good work to kind of update processes and to kind of formalize. I mean, they developed the community center board has developed a strategic plan for the community center. Sarah has really taken a good look at all the aspects of that job and organized things and prioritized things and looked for ways to make sure that the resources that we've allocated to the work that she does are being used in the best possible way. So just want to publicly give my thanks to Sarah for the great work that she's doing. Again, I think this MOA serves the county's needs very well, and we recommend that the board approve it.
Commissioner Sterling, anything you want to share since you sit on there?
Yes, I have for the last 10 years. So I'll give a little background, my experience with county extension, which has been here over 60-some years, and started off as the county agent, and then title changes happen all the time, so now they're the extension educator. I think transitions are hard, and I think when this was presented to us 3 years ago, we were looking at, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? You know, we have someone who retired, Diane Booth, and we have some opportunity to look at this all in a new light. And I'm just going to cut to the chase. I think today is not the day to recommend it. I would like Commissioner Johnson to be a part of this because she's also on the board with me. And I've always had an issue with two people being on the board. It's a state legislative thing, and I'll just take care of that later at some session. Because as we all do in our counties, we have someone who is designated to go to a meeting, and then we have a backup on that. And I think that's more than adequate. Anyway, I sat through all of this with Brady and all of that. But two people, okay, that's another issue. But I'm hearing from folks in the community who feel, and I'm just going to say this statement right now, that the university has taken us over. And I think Sarah's done a stellar job. I think she's risen to complete what has been asked of her to do. But I feel that every meeting that I go to, she doesn't make an agenda, the university does. When we have meetings, it's always the university, and then we get down to Sarah's report. Sarah is the one who's the educator here. And I feel that we need to relook at this. We have till the end of the year to decide if we're going to renew or not. And I'd like to know the implications of if we don't, what happens. I'd like to look at more community comments, because I am getting them from past board members. We don't even have a quorum. This last meeting, we had the secretary sitting in so that we could have a quorum. We have 3 vacancies. Nobody stepped in. And I mean, that's across the board with a lot of other things, not just this. But the interest and what has happened to our little Cook County extension group is puzzling. It's very puzzling. I think we are the only one in the whole state of Minnesota that has a community center along with running an extension business, coordination. So I would just ask for your support in waiting until Commissioner Johnson would have a chance to give her opinion on this and move it out to either the end of this month or beginning part of September.
Other comments?
Oh, yeah. I wish we would have talked more about some of your concerns at the work session when Extension was here presenting. I haven't heard any concerns until some emails from a member of the Public Airline Drive that also spoke today, which I found confusing because the opening statement was, all this is factual and true, and the very next statement was false. And so I was taken aback. Administrator Yorkie did not make this decision. We as a board made this decision. My understanding is that until we were part of the MOU, we were the only county in the state that was not. And for good reasons, and we had our system and it worked well. When Diane was retired, we looked at this and with the University of Minnesota Extension and their resources to find candidates and to interview candidates and to go through that whole process. And the feedback I've been getting from the Northwest Food Project and members of the public at large is that we've got a great thing going and we want to keep going with it. I'm not sure that the MOU has anything to do with, I'm sorry, the MOA has anything to do with board attendance or vacancies. I think that might just be our demographic. It's like you said, it's challenging to get enough people to fill all these seats, and the statutory requirements is a whole other next level that you had mentioned. I can be okay with tabling this until Commissioner Johnson is with us as well. It's just that from a work session, I didn't gather any real concerns. The biggest concern is just the cost increase, which that's just happening because of health insurance, basically, and the cost of living increase. So As far as the meat of it or the structure of it, I don't know that there'd be any improvements to the agreement, but I guess I'm just kind of a little off guard with the rub of the MOA.
I've had only, other than the public comment today and the email we got from that particular citizen, I've only had positive comments.
Right.
From the Northwood Foods Project, from people that are actually going out to the orchard, that are working on Fridays, doing weeding and mulching and those types of things. I see that the facility is very well used and that there's great organization around the use of that facility. I mean, it's used 7 days a week, all year long. And one of the things I see as a real plus that has happened since we made this change is that we are able to get resources with the University of Minnesota, but there's a tremendous amount of collaboration. And as an example, I'll just take the fact that we have worked with Firewise, we have worked with the University of Minnesota Extension and Emergency Management to bring workshops and trainings and videotape them at Cook County Higher Ed. That had not been done before. And we're getting out to a tremendous number of members of our community who don't even come to the community center. I pulled, asked actually Kelsey Kennedy to pull some data, and one of the sessions we ran this spring, 252 people went online and looked at the program. So the outreach is incredible. So I am just very supportive. I have not had, the same, I guess, questions that you've had, Commissioners. Commissioner White.
And I've had a number of phone before this, right after our committee of the whole. Before then, just taking it all in, and then I got phone calls about people being unhappy with Sarah's lack of knowledge on different things, regards to plants or pests or whatever, like 3 different community people. Part of it, I think, is because Diane Booth was an overachiever and she had a lot, big shoes to fill. She would say, oh yes, this is, and she'd give you the Latin name for it. But I think that might be part of it, and it might be, in one instance, it might be a personality, fairly a social person who's very nice, but doesn't interact socially very well, but had a relationship with Diane over the years, and is just not hitting it with Sarah at this point. So what we are getting now, could we not have tapped into the university resources before? Like, the collaboration with them helping with Firewise, and I mean, just all these different things.
Those are things that Sarah has initiated.
Okay. And so if we did not have the contract with the university,
we would not have those resources. For example, let's go to the welfare readiness program that was put on. She brought things from the University of Minnesota about how to do household inventories prior to fire, insurance purposes, contact information if you evacuate, things that we did not have in place. And so she and the University of Minnesota brought those to us.
Yes.
Commissioner Stroh.
And to Commissioner Mills' point about why wasn't something brought up in the whole, I felt that I needed to let Carrie have it per se. I didn't want to challenge anything or say, because she's new at this as a regional director. She lives in Cloquet, and she's new at all putting all of this together, so I wanted her to have the stage.
Sure.
And it was only after that that I was receiving comments. So, and that's not to say that there wouldn't be opportunities for Sarah to still continue getting University of Minnesota programs. We can all do that.
you know, we can all do our own insect or whatever. Anybody knew who was stepping in. And unfortunately, there were circumstances that she did not have training. So therefore, she was sent into an office of, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? And she sorted through all that. And I give her credit for all of that she sorted through. So if a new bug comes up, Diane would research it, and I'm sure Sarah would research it too. So that isn't the point.
Right.
It's the point of, as one person said, it's like a conglomerate coming in and taking over. And so they're seeing it as a, not such a.
Power grab.
Yeah, and so that's, you know, that's all I'm saying, that's what the perception is, so that's where we are.
Administratively.
That perception is completely contrary to my 3 years of experience working with the extension program staff. From the beginning of our conversations about whether we should enter into an MOA with the U, they have worked with us in a very collaborative way. And they have worked to make sure that this agreement reflects the unique needs of Cook County. We are the only county that has an extension position married to a community center director position. And I have to say, Sarah Chur and Carrie Cabot, everybody from that office, they have been great to work with. And I don't see any effort to take over Cook County. I think they have been really working in a way to try to work with us and make sure that our needs are met. And I think they've done a great job of that. So I think that's a really great characterization.
Yeah, we're such an independent community, but I feel that sometimes when there's collaborations, it might not jive with the independence. And so it might feel like a takeover, but really it's more of a collaboration instead of exclusively independence. So I could see where that people might be feeling a little cramped and that the agenda point too is pretty interesting.
Commissioner.
Well, and I would like to say to Sarah's credit, since I've been walking around with the architect and I've been up at the community center and I've been at the same table as her, I have found her participation, her insight, her thoughtfulness, and just ideas like, well, you know, just working with the architects, talking to the clients and knowing the community center, I was nicely surprised. I mean, I don't know if surprised is the right word, I just didn't know what to expect. But it was on a good caliber of the person that developed that area. So I felt very good about that part of it.
She is very capable, and if she doesn't know something, she learns about it. And like you said, Commissioner Storley, I mean, you know, I'm sure Diane was in that position many times in the course of her career, where she had to learn new information. So, and I think Sarah's doing an excellent job of getting up to speed. I mean, like you said, she came in to fill some big shoes.
How long has she been here?
She's been here now 3 years.
3 years.
Well, and this isn't about Sarah or the position, right? This is just about our collaboration. And it was interesting during the interview process because before we interviewed, we were discussing about this. And at the time, my memory, and please correct me, was that extension of saying, yeah, sorry, you kind of have to do this, so we're not going to actually extend these resources, as you know, as you won't have as full access as we give to those who have an MOA. Well, I mean, otherwise, what's the point of the MOA? If we don't need an MOA, why would we have an MOA? You know, it's because they're offering. We have more access because of the MOA. Otherwise, what is the point, right? Like that was the point of the MOA is for tracking.
Well, it's for data collection and completing, knowing what resources or how the extension in Cook County is being used. I don't know. I mean, I don't know, but as a taxpayer, you need to say that the Minnesota extension will give me some information.
Oh, no, sure it will, but it won't, not to our org. It won't be like the same resource where they handle calls. But just the sheer support staff that Sarah has within Extension. Just the HR, just the interview process, and then there's the whole knowledge base. There are aspects of Extension that Diane didn't lean into as much. And I'm really hoping, and I think Sarah is already doing it, but I'm really hoping we can lean in more on those, particularly with family services. And it's not all egg, is what I learned through that process. And before, Extension was egg, but that's only a small part of it.
Small part, but 4-H was a big deal. I've attended all of the meetings at the AMC. In fact, there's going to be another one at the end of this month, which is really something that I've always enjoyed, is that we meet during the state fair and have our meeting at a resource place, and then we get on the bus and go over to the 4-H building, which I was part of 4-H for many years. So that was a big deal. But when I first started being on the board 10 years ago, going to those meetings, it was 4-H, farming, suicide of farmers, and agriculture. It has really grown now, and I see, a whole new set of guidelines and things that are more appropriate to other counties, but it's still agriculture.
Well, given our discussion, we can go one of two ways. We can table this till Commissioner Sterling comes back, or we can have a motion, or thank you. Long meeting, thank you. Commissioner Johnson returns, or we can move forward with a vote today. But we need a motion.
I'll make the motion to table it until the next meeting. And should Commissioner Johnson not be able to attend, I believe that probably have enough information. Her insight would be interesting. I mean, I'd like to know how she's feeling about feeling like it's being usurped or being driven from the outside. Not just what you said, just about communities, but it's a change, and I sat on that board really, really long time ago when my kids were like in middle school, so that's a long time ago. So, and should Commissioner Johnson not be able to attend, I think we should put it to the vote, because I don't think there's a lot of danger.
Well, yeah, I was frankly surprised to hear the level of concerns that Commissioner Starley was sharing. And so maybe Commissioner Johnson has more insight there too, so I would like to hear more about that.
So we have a motion to table till our next meeting. Is
I'll
there
support.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. We have a motion and support. Any other discussion?
Do you see any problem with tabling it? Logistically, okay.
Next time.
Okay.
Until the end of the year, so Commissioners.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Right, a few things under updates, and I know I'm standing between you and lunch, so I'll make it pretty brief. Just wanted to let you know that we're well into the master planning process with BKB for the look at the courthouse, and then also potential redo of the community center. We have already seen some preliminary ideas about how this courtroom and adjacent spaces could be modified to address some of the security issues that we currently face. BKB is looking at creating like a sally port that would enable the sheriff's office to bring inmates over for hearings and basically securely get them out of the vehicle. They would have their own dedicated hallway and entry into the building, so that no longer would we have people in custody and other people who are part of the court proceedings. So that would eliminate that security risk. And we'll have a lot more information at a future meeting about how that would be accomplished. There's also a proposal to create a secure entry where we would use some of the space in the assessor's office. I'm probably going into too much detail here, because to describe everything, is not going to work in the amount of time that we have. But suffice it to say, they are looking at some of the key issues. One thing about the courthouse, or the courtroom rather, the space is small. The BKB did contact the State Historic Preservation Office. Preliminary signals are that we could modify this interior space to make this courtroom larger, maybe move into the county attorney's space, current space, to create a gallery back there and open up some space in here for proceedings. So there are a lot of moving parts, and what I'm describing is very preliminary and subject to revision. The other thing we're looking at is creating some new office space over at the community center. This would be a building basically behind the community center that would create new offices like the Court of Human Services. That would open up the other side of this building then for county attorney's offices, court administration, and probation. We would also be addressing space deficits with soil and water, which, as you know, we have 5 people now that are crammed into a space for basically two people. So a lot of good work going on there. Again, I continue to be really pleased with the way that BKB is conducting this process. They listened very, very well. And the input that they received from stakeholders is reflected in the designs that they're proposing. And I would invite Commissioner White, she's been part of this process, if you have anything that you'd like to add about your experience in our most recent conversations.
They continue to be 180 degrees different than our management. Probably says it all. They're or management, remember that group from way back when? Anyway, I continue to feel good about their efforts to help us get what we think we need. And sometimes we don't know what we need, but they can kind of explain that we should really think about this, especially with these safety issues. So I think it's a good choice, and I actually don't tell them that I think they underbid this job this time, what we're paying them for all of this.
I think the value of what we're getting from that is
definitely
very high.
Yes, yes. And I do know that at some point they're actually going to, probably it might end up just being a conversation with tribal council, trying to, but they're willing to go up and talk to somebody about how can we do some cultural softening or additions to these additions. And they've just been too busy. But Henry is ready to go, so.
And thank you for facilitating that. Other things, just wanted to, I did talk with Henry Fittner from BKB about the status of the proposal for the addition to the LOC, the full range for architectural services. He said they are working on that. They don't have it ready yet, but they're looking to get it to us fairly soon. So that is in process. And then the last thing I wanted to mention, we did have first round interviews for the facilities director yesterday, and I'm happy to report we have some really stellar candidates. It's going to be a really difficult selection process. And so we're kind of wrapping up, trying to figure out who we bring back. But again, strong candidates, very knowledgeable, and I'm excited about our prospects for doing something really amazing.
Who sits on the, who's on the interview?
The first round interviews, it was me and Rowan Watkins and Allison McIntyre. And then for the second round, I think we're going to involve staff, and probably a commissioner.
Brian will be involved?
Yes, Brian will be. So.
That's a little atypical, right? To have the outgoing, I mean, it is a different position.
It is not, you're right, that is not the usual practice. I can see value in doing that.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. I'm trying to think if there would be any drawbacks.
Well, I think because the position is different, that there aren't the drawbacks that you would have in a typical situation.
I should probably ask, is there a commissioner who would like to be part of that next round of interviews?
I'd be happy to. Anyone else?
I would also be happy to, but I'm very happy to. I'm happy with the committee, the interview committee. I don't feel the need, but if you wanted more participation, I would be happy to.
So that's it. I mean, there's a lot of other stuff always swirling around, but those are kind of big decisions.
All right, Commissioner updates, Commissioner Storley.
One interesting attendance I had was at the Cook County Board of Directors, visit Cook County. And Andrew was there to give a presentation. And he gave numbers here. Right now for VRBOs, we have 366, of which 72 are self-managed, that's like within resorts. We have 340 that are licensed and 25 that are unlicensed, which they're working with. He had a wonderful map with little dots where they all are, but it's not ready for public release yet. But
soon.
Yeah, it will be soon. Yeah, so that's my one really fun and important community project.
Great. Commissioner Wood.
I guess the most exciting one, the North Shore, the Northern Counties Land Use Board in Grand Rapids. They are very interested. Well, the invitation has been extended from Grand Portage for them. Grand Portage wants to host the meeting, and they are in agreement. They really want to come. And it seems that they really know Bobby from his time as a commissioner, and they're looking forward to doing that. Margaret Watkins attended last time, and she was very clear that the difference between reservation oversight by the federal government and counties are overseen by the states, that there's a real difference, especially, I mean, even with water and with everything. And so she was there, and she actually had one of the tribe's lawyers with her. It was just for information. It was not, I mean, it was very good. It's not confrontational. It's just an educational opportunities, and this was at the group's request many times, many months ago, and they finally had a chance to get there. It was good. It was very good.
Commissioner Mills.
I'm sorry to share that Teresa Vina will be leaving as director of EDA. We accepted her resignation at a special meeting yesterday. So, starting that search again. In the meanwhile, we're hoping to hire our HRA director as interim director for EDA, and then Teresa also is willing to do work to help support in the meanwhile during the transition, but only more as a technical contractor. So, not happy with that, but I know there's a lot of ins and outs, and it wasn't an easy decision for Teresa whatsoever. I did ask if there was anything else coming to Louis EDA that we could steal. Doesn't sound like it, actually.
She's done a lot of great work.
Oh my gosh.
In a very short amount of time.
Oh my gosh, yes. I said my only complaint is setting the bar so high, because there's a lot of huge things at Harvard, the golf course. There's just a lot of professionalism and formality that's been injected, and it will continue. But it's just my expectations are set pretty high now. So the world turns.
Do we have a concern that Jason will be overburdened? Because that was the whole point of having two.
We do certainly have that concern, and basically, it's gonna be keeping the lights on situation. We have grants that we do not want to lose, and we have projects that need to stay relevant and moving forward, but, it's just kind of treading water. Jason, Director Hill has, plenty on his plate, so there is that concern, and we talked about that, and then that's kind of where the independent contractor conversation came from as well, Jason's willingness there, so. She did give 4 weeks, which, is very nice, but now we're down to 3 weeks. But we didn't officially accept it until yesterday.
Madam Chair, I have a question. Since you represent us on that board, I have a personal concern or a personal request that I believe on the 20th in the afternoon is your meeting, and will it be Zoom? It's in the commissioner's room?
It's in the commissioner's room. I believe at the last meeting, we finally got the tech worked out because it's not a county. It's not a county board. There's Charlie Bajano that's really helpful, and hopefully we got things worked out there. But to be honest, I don't frankly know just where things sat and been recorded and all that stuff. I didn't go back and review it, so.
My question then leads to the reason that I'm interested in that there will be a report about the Spear Golf Course.
Yes, it'll be a big.
It's
Like
done.
people to attend.
Can I attend to?
We'd have a quorum, so.
I can.
Generally, Commissioner Johnson is there. I don't know if Commissioner Johnson will be there, but I do recognize the importance of the report and the discussion.
And the report will be available
Right.
if we're not at the meeting.
That's
So you
It's
will
already,
attend.
what it's.
I've seen
Commissioner
it.
Johnson is making it.
I'll have to find that out.
And as Commissioner Sullivan said, the report is already available, so you can have that. It's just the presentation and the conversation. And I think that's gonna be a really important discussion, so.
Is that the meeting that's at heart?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
okay.
where I saw it. Those
Not
are
right
good
now.
things.
Yeah, not right now.
Let's see, I had the SWCD meeting where we primarily reviewed the budget that Elena brought us today. We had our 2 town halls, our public hearings, and spent a lot of time visiting with people, just chatting about campus and learning about what our community needs and wants. Had a Cook County Coalition of Lake Association meeting, and what was fascinating is they have always had 3 subcommittees: aquatic invasive species, septic, and get the lead out. And they have added a 4th subcommittee, surface water. And so there are a group of lakes, I believe all 3 are up the Gunflint Trail that are considering some type of surface water ordinance. And so they have formed that subcommittee, and administrator, you might be calling them. But at the meeting, I know Caribou Lake was willing to share their big thick notebook. We all remember looking at that and all of the data. But anyway, that is a new subcommittee for COLA. And then on Saturday, I went to the Seagull Sag Property Owners Association at the end of the Gunflint Trail. And they talked a lot about what Mike Valentini had done for the Gunflint Trail Fire Department. He has his house up for sale and is moving. Those are going to be some big shoes to fill. They talked about the progress they have made as a volunteer fire department and just how much they appreciated all of his work. So I wanted to publicly recognize that work. He's not done yet, and everybody's hoping no one will look at his house and sell it and be here. But anyway, it was a very, very good event. We also looked at the vacation rental data for that end of the trail, and what will be very nice for people throughout the county is they'll be able to look online and go live pretty quickly at vacation rentals in their neighborhood and see the property ID, and they can see the unlicensed ones too. It was interesting that back when I did the Devil Track Lake presentation, so that would have been in June, that they could see where those two unlicensed ones were located. And it helps people if there's concerns or issues to know what's going on in a property. So with that, that would be all of my meetings. We have a lot of meetings coming up. Correspondence with our tax comparisons, May through June, and then recognition of staff. So Alyssa Sorsha-Shiba, 2 years with us, Andrea Orist with PHHS, 3 years, and Josh Dix and Robbie Gass, both 4 years with the Highway Department. And then a milestone anniversary for 5 years with Jacob Backer, also in the Highway Department. So I thank you for all their good work and contributions to our community. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn? Is there support?
I'll support that.
We have a motion and support. Anything further? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all very much for your flexibility today.
Next time, we're reading longer sleeves.